Today's video is all about 4 terrifyingly true experiences with black-eyed kids. Hey guys, it's Desi. Welcome back to the channel, and you're in the place to be if you love all things magical, mystical, and mysterious. Today's video topic is all about paranormal encounters with black-eyed kids. Now, originally I wanted this video to be paranormal encounters with both white-eyed kids and black-eyed kids, but honestly I could not find any actual stories that were claiming to even be legitimate encounters for white-eyed kids, let alone any actual encounters with white-eyed kids. So if you guys have experienced it, or if you know of a story that is claiming to be an authentic experience, definitely let me know down below. Link it down below for me. Or if you don't mind me reading your experience on camera or someone's that you know, you can write to me in my mailbox. It's in the description box below, and let me know if you want me to change names or anything, but I'd love to read it for you guys on camera. Today's video is all about 4 terrifyingly true experiences with black-eyed kids. If you guys are just tuning into this Black-Eyed Kids series, I actually did a video all about black-eyed kids and their history, as well as my personal experience with a black-eyed kid, so you can definitely check that one out. I'll link it in the card here as well as the description box below. And I also did a video all about black-eyed kids and white-eyed kids and their differences, so definitely check those videos out as well. Give them a like and a share for me, and comment down below if you've experienced black-eyed kids or white-eyed kids, or if you know anybody who has. Also, I would love to know if you believe in them. Do you believe white-eyed kids exist? Or do you think they're just a derivative of the black-eyed kid story? Definitely let me know in the comment box below. Get a snack, maybe turn off the lights, and let's get spooky. Now, this first story is called Halloween. This is so funny. I've never heard of BEKs before my incident, so I come on here to post my story, and the first story I see is about a BEK. Weird. Let me preface this by saying I'm by no means a writer, just a domestic engineer living in North Texas. Also, I don't believe in the paranormal, ghosts, demons, aliens, whatever. However, I did have an event happen to me this Halloween. I have to admit, has me scratching my head. This is my first post on Reddit, and sorry to say I'd never even heard about it until yesterday. I told my best friend about the incident, and she's an avid reader of No Sleep, and told me if I didn't post it, she would. So here I am. Anyway, hope you like. So it had been a slow trick-or-treat night in our neighborhood that evening, which is pretty odd in itself. We usually have kids from different areas dropped off in ours, and have a consistent parade at our door. That night, I'd say we'd had no more than 8 to 10 groups of kids come the entire night. It was about 9:30 p.m. and my husband and I were sitting in our family room watching some of those ghost shows based on supposedly actual events. Like I said, I don't believe in that stuff, but I do like a good ghost story now and then. And it was Halloween after all. We hadn't had any activity at the door in over half an hour, and it was getting late, so we decided to turn the porch light off and let our dog Chloe out of her crate. Chloe is an American bulldog and is very docile. We only put her in the crate because we're afraid she'd try to get out and play with all the kids, and I didn't want to have to chase after her down the street. Also, we didn't want her to scare any of the kids because she would look a little intimidating to younger kids. So I turned the outside light off and let Chloe out, and she followed me back to the couch and laid down at my feet. It was getting close to 10 p.m. when my husband decided he had had enough fun for the night and was going to go upstairs, take a shower, and get ready for bed. After all, it was Thursday, and he still had to get up early the next day. My teenage son was out with his friend at a local house and wasn't expected back for another hour or so. So that left me alone on the couch with Chloe. Now, just because I don't believe doesn't mean those shows don't freak me out a bit. And being alone now, watching what I'd have to say was kind of on edge, as it were, It wasn't long after I heard the upstairs water on the shower turn on when there came a light knock, knock, knock at the front door. My initial reaction was, what the hell? Really? It's almost 10. Go home. But soon an uneasy feeling came over me. Why the knock? Our doorbell glows in the dark, and without the porch light on, it would be extra obvious to anyone there. I paused. I couldn't really just ignore it. Our front door has a big beveled glass panel, and anybody right at the door could see in enough to see someone in the family room watching TV. It would be pretty rude for me to just sit there and not answer it. Knock, knock, knock. Again from the door, I glanced down at Chloe, and she was gone. My gaze followed her usual path to the front door, expecting her to be on her way there, as she normally does. Nothing. She wasn't there. I stood up to look around the room better and found her crouching by the back door like she was wanting out. However, she never asks to go out like that. She always comes and licks my hand or puts her head on my knee. This was totally out of character for her, and I have to say, heightened my anxiety. Chloe, crate, I said. She just turned back to look at me like, hell no, lady. Ain't moving. I yelled up to my husband, but if he was already in the shower, I knew there was no chance of him hearing me. Knock, knock, knock. About that time, a car drove down our street and cast just enough light on the door to where I could see the silhouette of two small children through the glass. I instantly felt relief. It was just some kids, probably a couple of my neighbors on their way back home and wanted to stop and show me their costume or something. I headed to the door and looked back to make sure Chloe wasn't going to follow. What a great watchdog, I thought to myself, as she just sat there. I turned on the porch light when I got to the door, and sure enough, I could see through the glass that it was a couple of pretty small kids. A little late for such young ones, I thought, and began to wonder about what kind of parents would let their kids run the streets that late at night. I only opened the door enough to where I could block Chloe's escape if she decided to grow some balls, which was only about 2 feet. What struck me immediately as odd was the kids weren't wearing any costumes. They were in normal street clothes. Also, no customary trick-or-treat either. I began to feel very uneasy again. It was a girl and a boy. The girl to my left was older. I'd say about 11 or 12. I could tell she was blonde, but I couldn't make out any distinct features, as our lights are from high above and on columns at the front of the porch, so most of the light was coming from behind them. I had not opened the door wide enough for any light inside to hit them directly. The boy was younger and about a foot shorter, I'd say 8 or 9, and looked to have light brown hair. The girl very politely spoke up, "Ma'am, can we please come inside and use your phone to call our mom?" As she spoke, something in the pit of my stomach was telling me something was wrong. What kid, even at that age, doesn't have a cell phone of their own these days? Hun, don't you have a phone of your own you can call your mom on?" I asked. This is when things got really weird. Both kids turned to look at one another, like they were going to say something to each other, but neither ever spoke up. They both turned back to me, and the girl said, "Ma'am, my cell phone battery doesn't have any charge in it. Can we please come inside and call our mother? We're alone out here, and my brother is scared." I have to admit there were two competing feelings going on inside me. The first, that of a mother's heart that wanted to help those two small children get to their mom. The other, a sinking fear in my gut that was keeping the other feeling at bay. It was then I noticed that during the short conversation, I already opened the door a few extra inches, which I was completely unaware of doing. I stopped. "Honey, why don't you give me your mother's number and I can call her myself?" Another pause, and they again looked at one another. After a short moment, they turned back at me, and the girl said, "Ma'am, my little brother has to use your bathroom. Can we please come inside while you call our mom?" And with that statement, the little girl moved closer toward the door, like she was going to just walk on in by me. As she did, she stepped into the light coming from inside the house, and I got my first real good look at her. Solid jet black eyes. That's all I could see. That motherly instinct was gone and replaced by terror. I don't think I've ever felt in my life. I could feel every hair on my arms and back of my neck standing at attention. I closed the door to where just my face was able to stick out. The little girl stopped and again pleaded, "Please, ma'am, we're really scared and alone out here. We have to come inside. Please help us." Then, on cue, both kids began to whimper and cry. That's when fear took over and I shut and locked the door. "I'll call your mom if you give me the number," I shouted through the door, "but I'm not letting you in my house." I could still see them standing there on the porch, just staring at me through the beveled glass pane. Part of me wanted to run upstairs to my husband, but the bigger part of me didn't want to lose track of where they were. That would have freaked me out even more, to not know where they were. After what seemed like forever, but probably only a few seconds, I decided to call my neighbor that lives across the street. As I made my way to the side table by our couch to my phone, I glanced at the back door. Chloe was nowhere to be found. We later found her in the guest room under the bed. When I got to my phone and started to look for his contact info, it was only then the kids stepped away from the door and began to walk to the street. As they did, I walked to the door to get a better look to see where they went, still not calling my neighbor. If you get close enough to the glass, you can see out enough to make out people's shapes, but you can't see much detail. Of course, standing that close to the door would make you pretty obvious to anyone outside looking in. From the door, I could see that the kids were still standing under the street lamp nearest my house staring at me. As I lifted the phone to my ear, after calling, only then did the kids start walking down our street. I met my neighbor out under the lamp once he was out there, but the kids were nowhere to be seen. Like I said, I don't believe in any of this stuff, and had never even heard about black-eyed kids before talking to my friend. What I have to think, is these kids were just out yanking people's chains on Halloween night. But I will say this for them, they were good, really good at it. They scared the shit out of me and my dog. The next one is entitled, "You Must Let Me In." On March 17th, 2008, I had my one and only encounter with a black-eyed kid. Before my experience, I had never heard of anything having to do with the black-eyed kids. I was 12. I was sitting outside of a hairdresser's in an old Chevy pickup waiting for my mom to get her hair cut. About 15 minutes had passed and I saw some kid walk back and forth along the sidewalk in front of my parked car. At first, I thought I recognized him as one of my friends from school, so I banged the front windshield until he looked my way. It wasn't anyone I knew. At this point, I was not scared at all. Not yet. The boy walked over to the side of my car and just stares. I think to let me get a good look at his eyes, to freak me out. Let me tell you, if you have ever seen a black-eyed kid, you have no idea what to imagine. Pupils as black as the night sky. The boy whispers, "You must let me in." And then I locked the car doors and ducked down into the space below the seats. 5 minutes later, he was gone. When my mother got into the car, she told me a boy with black eyes had came into the hairdresser's and insisted for my mother to give him the keys to the car. She refused. Thank God she did. That one gives me chills. It's super creepy. I haven't pre-read these at all. It looks like we have about enough time for about 2 more stories. So the next one's called, "No, You Won't Be Calling Anybody." The incident took place about 13 years ago. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We were small-town newlyweds from the Midwest. We moved across country to one of the biggest cities in the Southwest, so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and new to city living, I habitually answered the door without a second thought. Never again after this. The first thing that should have tipped me off to the peculiarity of the situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 a.m. in the morning. The second thing that should have dawned on me is the kid had to reach over a rather tall patio gate to unlatch and open it. The knock at the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work, a pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken with an inexplainable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him. Teenager, average height, average build, knee-length black leather coat, short black hair, and sunglasses. The sunglasses at 6 a.m. struck me as odd, and even more odd, he was eating an apple. He was very polite and asked if he could come in and warm up. I said no, closed the door, and slid the security chain into place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in and warm up. No, I replied, and attempted to close the door. Before the door could shut, he put his hand out, stopping the door on its hinges. He looked directly into my eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, "Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?" "Fuck that," I replied, albeit a little confused. "Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police." He takes a moment to let this information sink in, lowers his glasses, revealing eyes as black as obsidian, and says, "No, you won't be calling anybody." At that moment, I force the door closed, lock it, and call out to my wife as she's scared shitless, hiding in the bedroom. All jacked up on adrenaline, I rip the curtains back and look out the window next to the door. He's gone. Absolutely no trace of him. I go in the patio and check the gate. It's still latched from the inside. That was effed up, I think to myself. As I turn to enter the house, I notice a half-eaten apple lying on the ground. That's creepy. Like, what if the guy used his mind control to manipulate them into thinking that he never entered, and he had, and they forgot the whole situation, and he left his apple there by mistake, or maybe even as a calling card, being like, "I was here, you did let me in, and you didn't call any police on me. I'm not gonna get caught," that kind of thing. Super creepy. And the last story we have time for is called Bus Encounter. Now this one I did read and it's creepy. Let's get into it. I was riding the bus back home after work. It was about 1 a.m. I'm a security guard and often work odd hours. So I'm sitting there and this guy gets on, sits across from me. He was wearing a suit, had a briefcase, regular looking guy in his 20s. What struck me about him at first was that he was chewing a cigar, not smoking it. You can't smoke on the bus. So I was just looking at him while he stared out the window and chewed his cigar. And all of a sudden, he turned and looked at me. His eyes were pitch black, just as you described. My heart started beating like a madman, and I felt my heart rate rising. I was starting to panic, and I had no idea why. I was just pants-shittingly terrified of this guy. Then he grinned at me, and his teeth were all covered in tobacco bits and brown juice. The cigar clamped between them. I almost screamed, but instead, I had the presence of mind to just get up and take the seat right behind the driver. I calmed down a bit after that, but kept an eye on the guy. He ended up chatting with some girl that got on, and they were still talking when I got off. Later, I convinced myself he was just trolling me, having a fun with a pair of contacts. Now I wonder. That's the 4 scary true encounters of black-eyed kids. We had one where it was more of a teenager. We had some that were much younger. Those were super creepy. Let me know what you guys think about those stories. And my question for you guys today is, what would you rather, meet a black-eyed kid or a white-eyed kid? Would you rather experience one or the other? I'm super curious to know, because I know for a fact I'd rather meet another black-eyed kid than have to ever go through meeting a white-eyed kid, for sure. And I'm sorry I was not able to find any white-eyed kid stories. I scoured the internet. If you guys know any stories, please let me know in the comment box below, or email me your stories if you would like me to read them on camera, and I would more than love to do that. So make sure, if you've not checked out my previous videos, I do have 2 other videos on black-eyed kids and white-eyed kids. Again, like I said in the beginning of the video, I have my black-eyed kids video where I talk about the history of black-eyed kids and their origins, as well as my personal experience with one, which is super terrifying. So make sure, if you've not seen it, to go check it out. I'll link it in the card again and the description box, as well as my other video where I compare black-eyed kids to white-eyed kids and the differences between them, and why one is more scary than the other to me. Also, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up and share it so that I know that you guys are enjoying the content, and that way I know I can make more on this type of subject. And with that, I hope you guys have an amazing day or night, and stay spooky.